Almost died from an overdose in 2007, which kind of sucked because, Haley, plug your ears. Because drugs were fucking delicious.
That was Marshall Eminem Mathers on the night he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2022. Not a polished apology, not a sentimental, rehearsed speech. It was raw, darkly funny, and brutally honest. A perfect reflection of a life built on contradictions. In one moment, it was both confession and warning, stripping away one of pop culture's greatest illusions, the invincibility of a god. At the peak, Eminem, a white rapper from Detroit, standing on the Oscar stage in 2003 as hip-hop's first winner for Best Original Song. The impossible numbers followed. The Marshall Mathers LP sold 1.78 million copies in its first week, a record that turned him into a global phenomenon. He wasn't just a rapper, he was a cultural force, a symbol of rebellion, a writer who redrew the boundaries of music and language to the world. He seemed untouchable. 15 Grammy Awards. The first rapper gained an Oscar, over 220 million records sold, more than 59 billion streams. A catalog that turned rage into rhythm and pain into poetry. Every word, every controversy, every diss track became part of the cultural bloodstream. Yet behind the platinum plaques was a past that refused to stay buried. Few knew that this lyrical prodigy once bounced between schools nearly 30 times before he was 17, that he was beaten so badly he fell into a 10-day coma, that the fury behind his verses wasn't theater, it was survival. And that's where the real story begins. Let's be honest, Eminem's rise wasn't just a success story, it was the American dream written in rhyme. It began in the cracks of Detroit, born from broken homes, trailer parks, and late-night battles where words were the only weapon he had. Marshall Bruce Mathers III grew up in chaos. His father left when he was barely old enough to talk. And his mother, Debbie, struggled with addiction and instability. They moved constantly, drifting from one cheap apartment to another more than 30 schools before he turned 17. Being one of the only white kids in predominantly black neighborhoods made him a target. At age 9, a brutal beating from a bully named D'Angelo Bailey left him in a coma for 10 days. School wasn't salvation. He failed 9th grade 3 times and dropped out at 17, working menial jobs to survive, washing dishes 60 hours a week, scraping together just enough to buy baby formula for his daughter, Haley. But in that bleakness, he found something electric: words. Rap became therapy, rebellion, and ambition all at once. Every verse was a diary entry written in all caps. His first attempt to turn that pain into success was Infinite 1996, a project full of heart but no audience. It sold barely 1,000 copies. Dismissed as a poor imitation of Nas and AZ, that failure nearly broke him. Depressed, broke, and addicted to painkillers. Marshall came dangerously close to ending his life, but from that wreckage, something new was born. Out of anger and humiliation came an alter ego, Slim Shady. Cruel, fearless, funny, and unfiltered. Slim said everything Marshall couldn't. When I stopped caring about what I said, Eminem later recalled, people started to care. Then came his last shot. In 1997, with nothing left to lose, he flew to Los Angeles to compete in the Rap Olympics. He finished second, but that silver medal would change hip-hop history. A young intern from Interscope Records slipped his demo to CEO Jimmy Iovine, who played it for Dr. Dre. Within seconds, Dre made a call that would rewrite music forever. Find this kid. Now, that was the moment the impossible began. From a kid who couldn't afford a Christmas gift for his daughter to a rapper about to change the sound of a generation. Marshall Mathers was no longer just surviving. He was about to explode. From 1999 to 2003, Eminem didn't just dominate charts, he dominated culture. He was no longer a rapper trying to prove himself. He was the conversation. Every lyric, every feud, every controversy shaped the early 2000s like a cultural earthquake. His voice wasn't just in the music, it was on TV debates, school hallways, late-night talk shows. For a brief, blinding moment, the world revolved around whatever Marshall Mathers decided to say next. His rise crystallized in what fans now call the Unbeatable Trilogy. 3 albums that defined modern hip-hop and cemented his place as both artist and antagonist. The Slim Shady LP 1999, The First Detonation. Backed by Dr. Dre, it introduced Slim Shady, the psychotic alter ego who turned rage into rhythm. My Name has made him a household name, but it was the album's unapologetic violence and twisted humor that made him an icon. It won 2 Grammys and announced that hip-hop had a new villain, one too smart and too fast to be ignored. The Marshall Mathers LP 2000 times. If Slim Shady LP was the warning shot, this was total war. Selling 1.78 million copies in a single week, it shattered records and moral boundaries alike. Stan became a cultural artifact, a word added to the dictionary, a study in obsession and fame. The album forced listeners to confront the uncomfortable truth Eminem wasn't just playing a character. Slim Shady was an exorcism, and sometimes the demon won. The Eminem Show 2002. The Empire in Full Control, the most sold album of the year worldwide. It revealed a more reflective side of Marshall Mathers. Tracks like Sing for the Moment and Till I Collapse balanced fury with fatherhood. For the first time, the man behind the myth stepped forward, blending introspection with spectacle. He was no longer just shocking, he was shaping the genre itself. And somehow, the chaos only fueled his ascent. Every protest from politicians like Lynn Cheney, every lawsuit, every moral panic became free advertising to fans. The outrage proved he was saying what others wouldn't. The more the establishment tried to silence him, the louder he roared. Then came 8 Mile 2002, the moment fiction blurred with autobiography. The semi-autobiographical film pulled in over $240 million and turned his life story into modern mythology. Lose Yourself was more than a hit, it was a generational anthem. The song topped the Billboard Hot 100 for 12 straight weeks and became the first hip-hop track in history to win an Oscar. Eminem didn't even show up to the ceremony. He stayed home in Detroit, putting his daughter to bed while the world applauded him. At that point, he was untouchable, a king, a poet, a pop culture juggernaut. The irony, of course, was that while the world was calling him a god, but the crown of a king always weighs heavy. And for Eminem, that weight began to crush the fragile foundation beneath him. The fame, the fortune, the constant spotlight, each victory added another brick to the walls closing in around him. What followed wasn't a collapse overnight, but a slow, relentless erosion. One moment at a time, one loss after another. The man behind the myth began to disappear, while the world was still celebrating him. Marshall Mathers was unraveling. The chaos of fame amplified every wound he had spent his life trying to hide. His relationship with Kim Scott, the woman he'd known since his teenage years, became a public circus of love, rage, and self-destruction. 2 brief marriages, 2 bitter divorces, and 1 infamous song. Kim, where fantasy and fury collided in one disturbing performance. The controversy didn't stop at home. His mother, Debbie Nelson, sued him for defamation, demanding $10 million over lyrics that mocked her. The man who once rapped about having no family found himself living that reality. By 2004, the fire that once fueled him had turned toxic. Encore felt hollow, its humor forced, its anger unfocused. Leaks and overexposure didn't help. But the real enemy was chemical. What began as painkillers after 8 Mile turned into a dependence on a cocktail of Vicodin, Valium, and Ambien. He called himself a functioning addict, but the truth was darker. He was living in a haze, keeping up appearances while sinking further into addiction. Behind the fame was a man running out of ways to stay awake and stay alive. Then came the breaking point. On April 11, 2006, his best friend, Deshaun Proof Holton, was shot and killed outside a Detroit club. Proof wasn't just his friend, he was his compass, the one person who knew Marshall before the fame, before Slim Shady. At the funeral, Eminem broke down, saying, without Proof, there would be no Eminem, no D12, no Slim Shady. The loss shattered him. Proof had been his anchor, and when that anchor was gone, he drifted into isolation and deeper addiction. In December 2007, Eminem was found unresponsive after a near-fatal methadone overdose. Doctors told him he was 2 hours from death. At his worst, he was swallowing 90 pills a day just to feel normal. Even that brush with death wasn't enough to stop him. He relapsed soon after leaving the hospital. Only when he realized his children might grow up without a father did something shift. On April 20th, 2008, Marshall Mathers entered rehab and began the grueling process of detox and rebuilding his life. The rap god had fallen from his throne. But when someone is at their rock bottom, that's the moment they can come back to peak again. For Eminem, recovery meant confronting not only addiction, but a world that had changed while he was gone. His return became a study in survival, reinvention, and the price of staying relevant in a culture that never stops moving. When he resurfaced with Relapse in 2009, he leaned back into Slim Shady's Twisted Humor, a horrorcore concept album that showcased his technical brilliance but felt trapped in the past. Critics praised the skill, but questioned the soul. It was a wake-up call. The old formula no longer worked. So in 2010, he pivoted. Recovery abandoned the chaos for clarity, trading shock value for sincerity. Not Afraid and Love. The Way You Lie became global anthems of resilience. The album dominated charts and proved he could evolve. But success came at a cost. Fans missed the danger. Eminem had become safe, relatable, inspirational, and, for some, predictable. As culture shifted, so did the battlefield. A new generation, raised in the era of accountability, began revisiting his lyrics under harsher light. On TikTok, calls to cancel Eminem went viral, accusing him of glorifying violence and misogyny. His response was defiance, not apology. In Tone Deaf, he mocked the movement, insisting cancel culture was powerless. The tension revealed a deeper truth. Eminem was now both a legacy act and a lightning rod, caught between two eras that no longer spoke the same language. Yet, through it all, the numbers never lied. With over 59 billion Spotify streams and 10 consecutive #1 albums, his empire endured. The Eminem Show remains the best-selling hip-hop album of all time. He might not rule the culture anymore, but commercially, he never left the throne. The man who once nearly died chasing success had, somehow, outlasted everyone who doubted he would live long enough to see it. Eminem's story is not just one of fame, but of survival. From trailer parks to Oscars, from overdose to recovery. He's lived through every extreme a life in the spotlight can offer. The scandals, the addiction, the redemption all became verses in one long confessional poem. He lost friends, nearly lost himself, and somehow turned the wreckage into rhythm. Today, he stands not as the untouchable rap god he once was, but as something rarer, a man who outlived his myth. In fame, the fall is inevitable. The miracle is getting back up.